So Ford just released their earnings for the quarter, and they actually turned in record sales numbers, but their stock's still sold off. How can this happen? Well, throughout this video, we're actually going to talk about the numbers. I'm going to show you where the big warning signs are for this entire car market. And Ford right now, Ford is screaming it. So here's the biggest thing about their quarter that at least I took from it, and the most confusing as far as how Ford is actually operating. And you'll kind of read between the lines here when I tell you. So they put up record number of sales in this past quarter, selling lots and lots of vehicles. But who are their consumers? Well, they're not me and you. They're not talking about sales to actual consumers. They're actual deliveries to the dealerships that they send their vehicles to. Their dealerships right now are sitting at over 100 days supply. And to just give you a reference point, the average right now of where dealerships are for all makes and models are at about 75 days. So Ford is sitting at over 25 days supply more than the average of all the other dealership bodies that are out there selling these brand new vehicles. And I'll give you another reference point. Traditionally, dealerships only want to have between 50 and 60 days supply on their lot at any given time. That's their sweet spot. So Ford is now at over double where they want to be in days of inventory, as far as their dealerships go at least. So how can this be that Ford is putting up record sales numbers to their dealers when their dealers, for face value, looking at day supply of inventory, look like they're very, very, very slow, and then the market in general looks like they're very, very, very slow? Doesn't add up, right? Well, here's what's happening. Ford is actually stuffing these dealerships full of trucks, full of these F-150s that a lot of these dealerships are having a hard time selling. And I can give you an example of it too. Look at this right here. Everywhere across the country right now, you can see Ford dealerships that are stacked to the brim. Even at this dealership I'm showing you right now, they have trucks, SUVs that are parked sideways in spots that don't even exist. You have to move 3 and 4 trucks to be able to get out one truck at these dealerships. Here is the thing that I'm talking about, the warning signs where Ford is kind of, I'm not going to say fluffing the numbers, they're real numbers, but it can't keep going on this way because dealerships are taking more vehicles right now than they are able to take, and Ford is pounding these dealerships full. They can turn in record sales numbers. They can turn in great sales numbers as long as they are able to keep pounding these dealerships full of inventory. But at some point, these dealerships have to say no. They have to start turning them away, and we're getting very close to this. And I've already heard of a lot of dealerships that are actually starting to turn down allocations. This is the thing. This is what's propping up a lot of Ford's numbers right now, and it's really not showing from actual dealerships that they're moving a lot of vehicles. So we're seeing dealerships that are slower, but Ford's turning in all these great numbers, but dealerships aren't actually moving these trucks to consumers. It's going to become a big problem later on in the year. So in this quarter, Ford's profits actually were down $700 million from where they were at this time last year. And it comes from a big thing that Ford just can't get right, and that's warranty spend, recalls. So it seems like Ford can't make a product that they are not recalling. It seems like we're seeing recall after recall after recall in this car market, and a lot of them are coming from Ford, and we see that quality over a lot of these major brands seems to be deteriorating. But I can tell you that in this last quarter, they paid $600 million alone on a fuel injector recall. And this is something I feel like we're going to constantly see coming out of Ford. Stellantis, in a large part, they've recently been fighting over the #1 spot for the most recalls, and usually Ford is always the king of this spot. So it's interesting to see that they know that this is a problem. They've addressed it all last year, every quarter that I was covering. Jim Farley come out and say, okay, we know that warranty spend is a problem. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to tighten up on our quality checks. We're going to add another line to be able to figure out what's going wrong with these vehicles before they get out. We're going to test more. They're doing all these things, and it's getting worse. So it's almost like the more money that they spend trying to fix this problem, the worse that they get at it. And here's the big thing for future sales and the longevity of the actual company if you have this that persists, and Ford being the #1 in recalls all the time, well, you have a quality hit to the brand name, and you already have consumers out there right now that won't buy Fords ever again because of issues that the trucks have. And I know that that's the fact because I'm one of them. I had a 2018 F-150 that had a lot of motor problems at 70, 80,000 miles. Had to go in and redo the whole thing. Shouldn't have to do that on an 80,000 mile truck. And there are going to be a lot of customers just like me, and even just reading these headlines, even just watching videos like this, you're going to see big time quality concerns for the future of Ford, and it's going to hurt their brand as we go forward and as there's more recalls, more warranty spend. And at the end of the day, it hits Ford's bottom line because they have to spend a lot of money on this. $600 million just in the last quarter on one recall. And these numbers were just released yesterday. I'm trying to get it to you as quickly as possible on this channel. I'll do a bigger deep dive into Ford's earnings on our main channel. And for a lot of you, you probably don't even realize this, but this is a different channel than probably what you're usually watching. So just make sure you look at that subscribe button, make sure you're hitting it, because a lot of you aren't subscribed to this channel. All right, so now the biggest theme across the earnings from all these manufacturers this year is tariffs, right? And it's the biggest scapegoat that we get in the car market right now. So Ford, no exception, right? So Ford said that tariffs cost them $800 million in Q2 alone, and they're expecting for tariffs to cost them $2 billion over the course of this year. And it can really show in their profit margins because on their retail side, their profit margins actually got cut in almost half. So they went from 4.4% profit margins down to 2.6. So we can have all these sales, we can have record sales or whatever, but if everything's costing us more, well, it's beginning to be a problem when you take a big cut in your profit margin. So volume, good sales, getting out to dealerships is good as long as those dealers can actually move the vehicles, but it becomes a problem when you want to actually move more metal and lower your prices. Well, if everything's costing you more, if your profit margins are shrinking, well, it's going to cut the ability of Ford, the manufacturer, to add more incentives for these dealerships to actually lower prices more, because if it's costing them more to get vehicles from Ford themselves, and if it's costing Ford to more money to get these vehicles to these dealerships, well, that's less money that they can take off to get consumers into vehicles. And at the end of the day, we already know the car market is slower, and it's slower because the prices are so freaking high. And if our profit margins are coming down, there's less wiggle room to actually lower prices. It's a big problem for the car market just in general going forward, but in this case, in Ford's story. Ford's story? Yeah, we'll roll with it. So here's the difference right here between where Ford is losing and where Ford is winning. So we have their retail profit of only $661 million, but in their commercial side, they made a profit of $2.3 billion. And this is showing really where Ford is making its day. So Ford needs to bank on the economy doing really well, on businesses growing, on them wanting to expand, buying more fleet vehicles. This is what pushes forward their commercial business. And this is what's really keeping Ford afloat right now, because you can see the profit difference, $2.3 billion versus what, 600 and something million on their retail side. So if we get a downturn in the economy, if we get a situation where businesses are starting to lay off, or starting to cut back, or starting to save money, I can tell you, I'm a small business owner. I'm not by any means what the economy is doing, but for me as a small business, I know that I'm slowing down. People that are buying cars that are $5,000 and under, they're not spending as much. And when that happens, I have to cut back on expenses. I have to go in and look at my expenses and say, okay, well, where can we get breaks here and there? What can we not spend money on? I'm not even thinking about expanding right now when things are slower for me. You're going to have a lot of other businesses that are out there in the market that maybe they were thinking about expanding, but now we have uncertainty in the market, so expansion is not even a thing. And for some businesses, a lot like mine, survival is something that we're actually thinking about. Just breaking even is something that we're thinking about. So if you have businesses that are in construction, things like that, that are in that same kind of mindset, are they thinking about loading up on 3 or 4 more F-150s for their fleet? Probably not. They're probably going to hold on to their money and make the trucks that they actually have in their fleet right now, make them run a little bit longer because they're just not sure what the market's going to do. And this right here, this is my favorite. This is where percentages can be very comical sometimes. So Ford's EV growth was up 128% year over year. Fantastic number, right? So they went from selling 10 EVs to 23. Wow. Great job for it. Now, it's not that bad, but it's not as far from the truth as as you would think. So what's funny about this is I actually went back and looked at the numbers for last year of all the Ford Lightnings that were sold in the U.S. And I divided that by the number of Ford franchise dealerships that there actually were in the country. And the average number of Ford Lightnings that were sold by each dealership in a month was 1. So on average, every Ford dealer across the country right now is selling about 12 Ford Lightnings at their dealership. So that's why this is funny to me, because they went from selling no EVs to selling no EVs, but even with that jump, there's 128% of a difference there. And they lost $1.3 billion in their EV space just in this past quarter. That's insane money for them to be just setting on fire. And then, but we do have something else that's a little bit funny, but they cut their EV loss per EV in half. So they went from only losing $44,000 per EV to now only losing $22,000 per EV. I'm sorry, I'm making a big joke about that. I'm sorry, Jim. Jim Farley is the CEO. I know he watches all my videos. I know that. But no, he doesn't watch it. But here's the thing. I mean, they were losing $44,000 in EV last year. You could go get a Mach-E for what, $39,000 to $40,000 on a lot. That's one of the lower trims probably. It blows my mind the amount of money that they've lost in this EV space, and now we're seeing a lot of rollback of them even having to pursue this market. And I foresee that in the future quarters we're going to see a lot of production rollback. We're going to see at some point, I think, Ford throw up their hands. Jim's going to come up and say, you know what? All right, we messed up. EV's not the thing, and we're not gonna be able to make money in it. We're losing money. We're setting money on fire, and they can put more money towards commercial and where they're actually making money. But they're losing $22,000 in EV, and that's down from $44,000 in EV last year. But their sales up 128%. One thing that was a good sign, I thought, I mean, they didn't give good numbers, but they reinstated their actual guidance. Now, they guided lower than what they previously stated, but in last quarter, all these manufacturers came out and said, okay, well, tariffs are making stuff so uncertain that we can't even guide, we can't give a forecast or anything like that. So I thought it was surprising that Ford still had this freebie of saying, okay, well, because of all this uncertain time, we don't need to throw out any numbers, any forecast or anything like that. They could have still gotten away with doing that this quarter, and they didn't. So I'm impressed that they actually felt like they had enough certainty to be able to predict what their numbers were going to be for the later part of this year. That's good for them to be able to plan. But they did guide lower than what they had previously expected, and that's just because, I mean, they know they're slower. They see their days supply of inventory up. They know they're stuffing these dealers full of trucks, and they know that a lot of these dealers are going to have to start turning down a lot of these allocations. So this is what I'm foreseeing. I think all these earnings reports are going to be okay for all the manufacturers this quarter, because we're still going to have some of that pull forward in demand that we saw earlier from people trying to get ahead of tariffs. Dealerships were able to sell some stuff, then dealerships were able to load back up again. But now we're all full at these franchise dealers, and I think the next 2 quarters are going to be rough.